and you might like it, but you gotta do it.
All right. Welcome to
Yay,
welcome to Mazecast episode, 4002 or whatever it is that we're on right now. Joined by Greg and Barry tonight. Hi, guys.
Oh.
My name's Greg.
Yes. You might not recognize Greg on account of the beard, but be assured the gentleman singing at the beginning of this episode is the same gentleman you've heard singing at the beginning of the majority of episodes we've done of The Maze.
Am I the guy with the flamingo cap?
Yeah.
Or am I a different guy?
Well, if I hadn't spelled it out, no one would know. We're so visually interchangeable. This is the first show we've done in October. October is, of course, well known as being the spookiest month of the year. And in order to celebrate the spookiness of this month, we are going to be doing the spookiest rooms in Maze for the duration of October. Although we probably won't do 24 again, but maybe we will. Who knows? 24 is probably the spookiest room, but we already did a whole show about it, unfortunately.
Well, horror sequels are really scary. They're like twice as scary as the originals, so it might be. Yeah. 24 Part 2. This time is personal.
That was an episode that needed some closure, so maybe we'll get the end of the story of what happened in Room 24 later this month. But tonight we're going to be taking a look at Room 26. Room 26. Let's see. Is that a good picture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have a better digital picture we could just throw up.
I didn't queue it up. So if you want to look for it while I'm talking, you could pull up the PDF if you've got it handy and put it up there. But
you're asking me to do technical things. I'm not very good at it.
Well, then don't do it. I don't care.
Hey, Ghetto Flower, can you put up yours? That's what I'm referring to.
I can try.
And then can
otherwise, meanwhile, continue the discussion while I.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said you got this, Vince. You didn't have it ready? All right, go ahead. Sorry, you have some statements. Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't think it was necessary to have the PDF queued up. I figure we walked a real thin line already with whether we're going to get a letter from Manson.
I'm talking about Barry's rendition.
Oh yeah, mine's up. There it is.
Okay, keep talking and have that up.
Okay, I did. I focused on Barry, so that's what we'll be seeing Barry's
version. Sorry to be an armchair director there.
Okay. Room 26, an unusual choice for us in that this is a room that seems pretty close to completely solved, or at least it's generally viewed that way, although I think there's a lot going on in this room that we don't have a really good explanation for. I think there's a lot of stuff in the text that seems kind of cryptic, and it seems like it's pointing at something we don't know what it means. I don't think we have a great explanation for why the four devils and why the stage. Like, I think we made the best of it, but I still think there's a lot to unlock about this room. So we'll try to walk through the things that are known about the room. We'll go through the illustration, then I'd like to go line by line through the text like we did in the Room 1 episode. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I like that. That actually, I think we found things during that process. Kind of the idea.
Yeah. So the classic solution to Room 26, where the correct door you're supposed to go to is Room 30. We are on the path here. This is actually the second room that you enter in your path to the center and back out after Room 1. 30 is the correct door. And in the classic solution here is that we've got the devil tail up on the flying devil up there pointing at 36. We've got the devil's pitchfork, which isn't easy to see in Barry's illustration, but the devil's pitchfork is pointing to 38, and there are some different ways we could excuse not returning to room 1, whether it's because, hey, we just came from there. I don't like that solution because sometimes going back the way you came is the right solution. Or if it's because the planet Saturn is pointing to 1, or if it's, I actually like this one, if it's because the trap door that the devil is coming through is touching room 1. And I like that because the trap doors are actually touching all the wrong doors, but not touching door 30.
But it's kind of pointing towards door 30, the leftmost trap door.
It's pointing towards the door, but not towards the numbers. The other devil clues are pointing to the numbers. I would agree the Saturn is pointing right at the 1 to door 1. The trap doors are not pointing at the numbers in particular.
Yeah, when I made this, I didn't know I was actually aspect ratio halfway right here. But yeah.
Then,
quick question about Saturn. Now that I haven't even thought about Saturn, I thought of Saturn as just like a 0. But is Saturn like in astrology, like the planet of ruin? I know one of those is ruin.
It's the planet of what?
Ruin? Like there's one of those planets after the asteroid belt is a ruinous planet in astrology. If you don't know,
I don't know.
Let's not. Yeah, let's go on then.
All right.
Now then, the solution that I offer that's along the same lines, I guess. I think it goes hand in hand with that solution. But I say if you take a look at the Devil's Pitchfork, it is not made symmetrically. In fact, I think that it's made like the number 3, because you've got a smaller loop on the top and then a larger loop on the bottom, just like you'd see in the number 3. And the bottom of it, actually, maybe I should hold up the actual.
Yeah, because mine, I don't think I put that detail in there.
No.
I did not.
It's like a stick.
Yeah, it's like a stick. I think I forgot the whole concept that it was a devil.
See,
Thought that was the guy with the stick.
There's a curve in the like tine that goes off to the left.
Now, is it showing your screen now, Vince, or is it still showing Barry's?
It's showing mine.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's showing whoever, yeah, or
There's
his.
an arrow on Barry's. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
Sorry.
So I take that to be a 3, which indicates one of the doors that has a 3 on it. And then what we're looking for is an indication of either the 0, 6, or 8, I guess. And the devils are indeed pointing out the 6 and the 8. If you take a look at where the devil's tail is pointing and the pitchfork is pointing, they're not only pointed at the numbers above the door, but they're pointing directly at 6 and 8. And so you could just say the left-out one is 0, so that's the way to go. But what I say is that the bell on the ground is in fact the 0 that tells us to go to room 30. When it's clued in the text, when it says, "What the devil is this supposed to be?" one asked. They gathered around, and I realized they were close to something. I quickly picked up the bell, ringing it loudly. Was this what you heard outside? The reasoning being, the bell forms a clue to 0 when it's lying down like that, and you can see that its mouth forms a 0. And when he sees they're close to figuring that out, he picks up the bell and starts ringing it so that it no longer serves as a 0 once he's picked it up and started ringing it. And so the 0 and the 3 tell you to go to 30. The devils point out the wrong place. Maybe Saturn points to 1. But Saturn is a less severe indicator, I guess, that you're going to the wrong door, because at least 1 is still on the path.
Yeah. Can I give... Oh, sorry. Well, I was going to give some support to what you were saying.
Yeah.
And if you're going to move on, then I should do that before you move on. But if you're going to say more about this, then you should keep going.
No, you go first.
Okay, so some support. Why do you disregard the devils? Well, there's also textual support for that, there's actually support for the bell also. And I'll just read all of this. I know we're going to go over this later, but so he asked something in his most patronizing voice. There are two patrons sitting out in the theater, and they're hushing. So the patronizing voice is silence. Okay. Mm. And then it goes on to say they objected to my tone, but it distracted them from the real clues. So we have two sets of mouths here. We have the patrons who are hushing, and then we have the devils who all their mouths are open, all the visible mouths. There's one devil that we can't see his mouth, but the rest of them they're open, and I think that's to imply that they're making noise. They're going, "Oh, Satan!" or whatever they're singing. They're making noise. And they're distracting you from the real clues. So they're pointing at 36, they're pointing at the 8, and those are distractions. And so you should really be thinking about the patronizing voice, which is a silent voice, which is a 0.
I like that the idea of the devils being noisy and the patrons being silent. And really, that sentence, they objected to my tone, but it distracted them from the real clues. Yeah, that plays right into the idea that the sound of the bell, when the bell is used to make noise, that disrupts its utility as a clue. It's when it's silent and lying on the floor. Yeah.
And that's what I took it to mean at first, but in this last pass in preparation, I was like, oh, that also refers to the devils with their mouths open. Because, you know, the original interpretation of this room was pretty thin, if you think about it, because it's just like, oh, they're pointing to two things, so it's the thing they're not pointing at. But there was no support for it anywhere else except that they're devils and devils are bad. But with everything else, it kind of creates a clearer picture, and I think it's something you can actually work with rather than just seeing some random pointing and, well, not random, but just kind of picking one aspect of the picture and going with that for the complete solution.
Yeah, and it's hard. I know I want to go through the text line by line after this, but obviously it's hard to do like just the picture and then just the text because, of course, they go hand in hand so much. In regard to the patrons, I think it's interesting that they're each holding up one finger, which in other places we might take to be a clue to room 1, you know?
Right. And maybe another way to read that is you're not supposed to go 1. That's a clue for 1. So rather than them meaning silence with that, they're objecting to that voice as well, the patronizing voice. So that's discluing 1, that's discluing 8, and that's discluing 36.
Well, what I was going to say, and I paused too long because it took me a minute to remember exactly where I was going with it. There's that line, the game usually goes as I plan it. And as Dave Gentile pointed out, and I think he's right, that phrase planet, is a reference to the planet Saturn up there. Now, what exactly that means, though, isn't clear. What does that mean? The game usually goes as I plan it. But the game usually goes as I plan it, despite the intentions of my visitors or perhaps because of their intentions. If you take visitors to mean not the group he's leading, but the patrons in the theater, then he could be saying, the game usually goes as I plan it, meaning the people usually go to the door indicated by the planet Saturn, despite the intentions of the visitors or perhaps because of it. In other words, despite them trying to clue silence, people still go to 1. Or perhaps because they're trying to clue silence, people go to 1 because they're holding up one finger.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's really good. I think that's right on. That was the one sentence I couldn't connect to anything, but I think that fits perfectly into the...
It hits on the ambiguity of their one-finger gesture, which could send you the wrong way or can help you out with the correct solution.
Yeah, because you could read that as discluding either, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so you need the whole bell thing to seal the deal, and that's what comes next in the text.
Mm-hmm.
And are those rabbits in the audience?
That's interesting. They're tucking their ears up in the hat.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like if they were rabbits, their ears are in the hat, so they're holding their ears in the hat. But if they're not, I don't know.
Well, I can't say I think they're rabbits, but I guess you don't really see ears on them, do you?
Uh,
Uh, I think he's right. They're rabbits.
um, the other orthodox, well, there's some more totally orthodox things about this room that are almost, let's just say they're certainly correct. The A in conjunction with the salt gives you salt plus A is Atlas backwards. Atlas is, in fact, the word that you get from this room that makes up the part of the riddle of the path. Um, so I think that's completely non-controversial that that's what the A and the salt stand for. Interestingly, though, you've got the planet Saturn and the moon, and Atlas is one of the moons of Saturn, which seems to be unusually superfluous cluing for the word of a room. Like, it's not uncommon for the door to be clued many different ways across the room. In fact, that's generally the rule, not the exception. But I can't think of another room where the word or the letter that you're supposed to get from it is clued several different ways, you know? Can you think of one?
I can't, but I usually ignore that part. I haven't like thought much about the words that the rooms give because it just seems like someone else has already come up with all of that. And
Although,
I
now that I
think
say that, it was just on our Room 1 episode when we figured out that the backwards letters are probably cluing you to look at like written backwards.
right.
So
And
this
I think it's because clues need support. You know, because the maze is so interpretive that to get anything concrete out of people, you have to kind of point to it with a number of different arrows. And if something's just pointed to with one arrow, which is kind of what the door solution was to 26 before y'all came along, it's like, well, maybe, but why that? You know, why that one arrow over all the other arrows? So if you have the moon and the salt and the A, then you have a couple of arrows pointing towards Atlas, and you can kind of triangulate and get Atlas.
Yeah, I like that now that because I did think this room was really anomalous in that regard. Like, why is it leaning so heavy to give us Atlas when the other rooms it's just like, there.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, but I like that. I think that's very similar to the images on the doors in one cluing backwards letters, and then here we have like Moon, Saturn, and then Atlas there. I think that's pretty good. All
And
right.
maybe as we go through these path rooms, we'll find more of those kind of buttressing clues um,
Mhm.
towards those path words.
Now, then there's an extended interpretation of this room that's been worked out between Gentile and White Raven that reads the room as a fairly layered metaphor for the Voyager space probe that discovered the moon Atlas when it went to Saturn. And I don't know that I can do justice to all the different things that they see in it, but essentially the three devils coming out of the ground is supposed to be like a rocket launching, and
The
then
stages of the rocket.
yeah, and it's like it was like a three-stage rocket, I guess, that launched the probe, and it's said on the Abyss and on Gentile's website that probe sometimes was like nicknamed the Devil Bird, although I haven't found a source for that. It did play some different songs, like it projected them out into space for aliens to potentially pick up on. And one of the songs it projected was a song called Devil Bird, but that was one song of many. Um, and then there's some stuff about the devil's open mouths are maybe supposed to represent the roaring of the engines. And well, I don't know how far I can go with much of that stuff. I don't. Uh, it seems like a bit of a stretch to me, and it doesn't answer the questions that I want answered. Like, if you were going to clue a 3-stage rocket, I don't think the 3 trap doors really give you 3-stage rocket, you know?
No, nor do
And,
devils.
no, I mean, to me, the devils make more sense in the fact that the area underneath the stage where people can go to come up through trapdoors or whatever is traditionally referred to as hell in the theater. The area over the stage is heaven, under it's hell. I could see that as being the reason for them
Isn't
being.
there a purgatory too?
And maybe the salt shaker is hell freezing over.
And they have to salt the ice so they don't slip.
Yeah. You know, metaphorically, because there's.
Metaphorically, right?
Yeah.
You know, that said, if there's some solid basis out there for saying people were calling the space probe the Devil Bird, I mean, that does seem like a very coincidental connection. You know what I mean? Like I could see accepting, yeah, if that thing was called the Devil Bird, it discovered the moon atlas of Saturn. We've got this thing, which is a devil with wings flying around by the moon and Saturn, and we've got the devil popping. I mean, I could see taking that. I just couldn't find any source that said that the probe was called the Devil Bird.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what. I'm not really prepared to dispute that or anything. What do you do with information? I guess if you were of that time and you had this knowledge of this devil bird, that could be another arrow towards Atlas. But us, like 20 years later, we don't really have that cultural basis to draw from, and so that information is just not useful for anything. It's not something we could really work with.
It does seem oddly pop cultural for Maze, you know, because it was something that was going on around the time that Maze was being written, apparently. At least that's what White Raven has written, I think. Or I get confused on what came from White Raven and what came from Gentile in the solution, because they really kind of worked back and forth on it, I think. But I can't, of course, there's stuff we haven't solved, but I can't think of anything else in the Maze that is so of the moment. Everything else seems to have more of a classical feel to it.
Well, maybe in part because we wouldn't be able to solve those things.
Yeah, I mean, with the exception of Michael Jackson, but I think Michael Jackson I think he correctly anticipated that Michael Jackson would be timeless, so that all the Michael Jackson clues would continue to make sense to future audiences.
Yeah. That and JC Superstar.
I think Kontiki had mentioned that apparently there's a location called Fez. Fez is a place that's near the Atlas Mountains. I don't know that I can make too much of that. Number one, these hats are not exactly fezzes, because fezzes are generally much shorter. I think there's a different name for these very long.
Well, you're thinking of fezzes for humans. These the hats depicted in room 26 are fezzes for bunnies.
That's true. They are rounded fezzes.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that as I was drawing it. Honestly, Fez, but for a rabbit.
But have you ever seen that series Life in Hell?
Yeah.
By Matt Fleming? That was written in the 80s at one point, and it had characters with fezzes, and it had bunnies. So maybe that's another pop culture reference from Christopher Manson.
It's true. It wasn't the bunnies wearing the fezzes, but you're right. It had. I can't remember the name.
Put those two together, and Life in Hell. Hell is the area underneath the stage. There's all these Satans here.
Yeah, you got the devils. Oh.
You'll have to get the timeline right, but you might be onto something.
Yeah.
I like it as much as the Devil Bird.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, maybe not quite.
Oh. All right, let's move on to other things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now there's a rope prominently displayed on the top left, and we don't really know what to make of that. People have suggested maybe that's supposed to form sort of a 3, And I kind of see, yeah,
That's more of a 6.
it's real loose.
That's
You
more
think?
of a 6.
You think? I don't
I
see
think if it's a number, it's a 6. Because
like
if
a
you look at the moon, you can see 8s in the moon, and there might be something with that.
See, I think it looks more like an 8 than a 6.
I'll have to look a little more carefully
I think it's
myself.
more of a 6. But I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. If anything, I was thinking that it is mirroring the shapes that are lining the stage and the seats and underneath the chairs. You know, there's that kind of like arc kind of shape.
I can see a 3.
But I don't really have anything for those ropes, per se.
Now, there's been some attempt to make something out of the position of the patrons in those seats. Me too, because each section of seats is like a 3 by 3 square, at least presumably. We actually can't see 3 seats in the last row, which is always a dangerous thing to do, to just say, well, we assume that it's there even though we can't see it, because there's a lot of stuff in Maze where what is cut off by the
Really.
corner, it's important. You're not supposed to imagine something's there. You only take what you can see.
Yeah.
But, if you took those to be like numbered like a calculator, 1, 2, 3. Well, I guess it depends on how are calculators. Oh boy, I really didn't prepare well for this because now I can't remember what the solution is or what the point is of looking at those like calculators. But
Well, there are 16 visible seats, so
Will be 9 and 6, right?
counting up from the bottom.
Yeah, like if they're like on the number pad,
Mm-hmm.
they would be sitting at no, they'd be sitting at 9 and 6. Or are calculators reversed from a number pad?
yeah,
Three at the
calculator
top,
for
so it's 3 and 6, which is 36. I don't think that's useful.
No, very misleading.
Yeah. I have something else with those seats. It's a solution you're not going to like, but it's an observation.
Yeah.
If you count, so that shape, that kind of tab-like shape, the shape that the seat makes, if you count up the ones that are wholly visible, okay, so you would count 5 seats on the left, 6 seats on the right,
Mm-hmm.
right, and then I think those 15 little tabs sticking up from the stage, so that should give you 26 right there. And then you have the 2 little tabs under the chairs on the floor. So if you look at the aisle, you're walking along the aisle and you're looking down at the bottoms of the seats, you have 2 little tab shapes. You see
Okay.
that?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you count the 2 hats, or alternately you could count the 2 ropes, and that gives you 30. But that's just a dumb counting game.
Yeah, I don't like that where you just pick some stuff and count it. Because you could have stopped that at any point. Like as soon as you got to the number you wanted.
But I totally hear you.
Okay. I know, and I just noticed something tonight, and I have no clue whether there's anything to do with it or not. The wrapping on the curtains on the edge of the screen is interesting to me. That it's like a line, an X, and then a line. I got no clue what to do with that, but I think it's interesting that they're done that way.
It could be how they're. I mean, I think you would need to know something about the theater first to kind of like. Is that like a way that, or maybe like classic theater too? Because I know Manson likes like old architecture. So is that a way that curtains are commonly tied back?
Yeah, it could just be a thing.
It might be a clue to something. But I mean, X in Roman numerals is 10. You have all these intentions mentioned in the text. 10 has a 0. It could be one of those just kind of like half-baked clues.
Yeah, we need a third 10 though. 10, 10.
Yeah, if you're literal about it, but I think some of his cluings are not so like they're just kind of you go through the maze and you kind of get a feel. Oh, I'm seeing 10s, and so like my mind is working through this, and I'm not really necessarily conscious of it, but I've come up with the 0 and the 30.
I think that's all. Oh, to reiterate something that our friends, the visitors in the maze, came up with during that episode, is that they pointed out that all the doors are obstructed except for the door to room.
Oh, right.
They're all obstructed by trapdoors and devils.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and I don't think there is any example in the maze of a door that's obstructed you wouldn't be able to go through that is the correct door.
Right.
Well, I
Yeah,
think,
well, and there's that line, not very tidy either, which I think supports that. There's like crap on the ground in the way of all the doors because it's not a tidy room. And in one sense, you can read the not very tidy either to read the bell, right? But it could very well just be talking about the stuff in front of the doors, which kind of fits with the line before it. Not enough light in here, which causes you to look up. You know, when you see the moon is in front of that.
well, on that note, let's move over to the text, unless somebody has something else they want to add about just the image.
Well, the devil on the far left might presumably not be a devil and not be blocking rooms 30 or 36.
Ah.
Or of course the trapdoor that it's in. But that's all I got.
Well, I mean, I think it's the trap door that looks like it's blocking 36. Like if you tried to open the door, it looks like it would smack into the trap door.
Well, yeah, there is that too.
I mean, yeah, we are kind of just assuming that's a devil down there. We can see an arm and a horn.
I have a little bit to say about that actually, real quick. I mean, you can look at it through the text or through this, but with these devils, there's that line about holding their ears, and I kind of don't think this anymore now that I realize the patrons are rabbits. But if you look at the devil on the far right, there's a conspicuous absence of a left ear for that devil. Right, his right ear, if you're looking at it, but his left ear.
Yeah, the pitchfork kind of covers it up there.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it would really cover it to that degree.
Maybe. Or it could be a weird angle too.
Yeah, but generally, like, so you have something that's talking about ears. So you're supposed to pay attention to ears for some reason. It's not just the music that they're covering their ears. There's something else to do with ears in this page. I think it's pretty, like, just from doing other pages of that, I think it's pretty strongly clued. And then we have a devil that's conspicuously missing an ear. And he does that thing in other places where, like, if you go to room 7 with the lampstand covering the eye, it's very much like that to me, except maybe even more conspicuous in a way. So I don't have anything. This is just a pure observation. I don't know what to do with that, but I feel like there's something there.
Well, I mean, that does leave you with 3 ears if you don't count the ears on the fake devil.
Right, and there's something about real clues, right? The fake devil's not real. So maybe that's just to say don't go to 1. I don't know. But then those devils are supposed to be disclues. So anyway, go to the text. I just wanted to point that out because it's visual.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know that we necessarily have to buy it, but you've got 3 ears then. You know, we were just pointing out how you can't really see ears on the patrons in the seats.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. But
well, they're tucked into their hats.
Well, they shouldn't. Okay, right, because they're rabbits.
This is so clear to everyone but you, Vince. Except they're rabbits. That makes it simple.
For some reason, I think they're rabbits. I was thinking like a Lewis Carroll kind of feel to the room.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I pushed the rabbits. Because, you know.
They're rabbit-like.
The devil. Anyway, you can mind. I mean, the devil mouths also kind of give you a
zero.
But see, I don't know how much we want to run with that, because then we've got the devils giving us an accurate clue, and then we're saying, well, when the devils point to a door, don't pay any attention to that. But when part of their body makes a 0, then that's when you know you've got something.
Yeah,
So
well, but though, you know, with your pitchfork, you're already having the devil's giving us a clue.
so
Yeah,
so
you're right.
is the zero face that they're making? Are they saying that the trapdoors lead to the prologue page, room 0?
Oh, like you can go to room 0 if you jump down there? I would say no, because there's explicitly, and this leads us to the first line of the text, which I think is pretty interesting. There's only 4 entrances and exits.
Okay.
Okay, and the
Yeah.
only door on the stage that you can get in here through, and I'm just kind of segueing here, Vince, I hope you don't mind, is
No,
one.
it's like,
You can't get into this room from any other room but one. So the other 3 entrances are where the devils are entering from the floor. And then the 4 exits are all numbered. So
I
this
do think
is a
that's.
dramatic room with 4 entrances and exits. There's 3 exclusive entrances, 3 exclusive exits, and 1 that does double duty.
Mhm.
An entrance and an exit.
I do think that's an excellent observation, and it doesn't, as far as we can tell, figure into any cluing of anything,
Yeah.
but it absolutely explains like what that statement is about. You know, it's a weird statement to make. Why emphasize 4 entrances and exits? And it kind of ties into the theatrical theme. If you're talking about entrances and exits, I mean that is kind of the way you think about it, but it still seems really strange to say that, especially when, as you say, there's only one way to walk into this room. But then obviously you've got the 3 devils entering in from the trapdoor, so yeah, it totally works out. Why did he do that? I don't know.
Unless there's something with the way the devils enter. So there's those 3 stages, right, of the rock. Because there's a peculiar way the devils are acting here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the best way anyone's explained the way they're acting is through the rocket thing.
Oh, that's, you know what? If you if you're looking at this, you just turn, you look at it, whatever. It is not immediately obvious whether you're seeing devils in the process of entering or devils in the process of exiting, because
Ah,
it could be going down into the hole. But it tells us 4 entrances and exits. We know that there are 4 exits in the doors. You don't know when you step into 26 how many of those doors will lead back in here, but we know that those can't be exits on the stage, because that would give you 7 exits.
right.
So that suggests to you that they are entrances. The devils are coming in. That doesn't help us either, so I don't know why I got so excited. But
But there might be something you can do with that. Like, I think a lot of solutions are, first you have to observe before you can solve.
I think that buttresses. Honestly, I think that buttresses the rocket interpretation.
Right.
If yeah,
Yeah, it proves they're coming out, right?
right. They're coming out. They're coming up.
I have one weird little side thing that supports this whole deal. If you turn to page 38, it was impossible to climb up the slippery slide, and another door wouldn't open for us. And that's the door that would go to 26. So there's just a little bit of highlighting there that's not a way that you can get back to 26.
That is interesting because there are doors that you can't go through all over there. Why in 38 do they make such a point of
Yeah.
that they can't open that door?
And it might have to do with how close this whole interaction could potentially be to the beginning of your journey. You know, say you're like vanilla maze going through for the first time. This is kind of like new information to you that the doors don't go 2 ways. You know, for example. But I don't know, just a little bit of extra there.
That is interesting. I've looked at that before, and I never really had a good reason for why they point out that the one door won't open.
Yeah.
Well,
It could be something as simple as the order in which Manson himself made these rooms. Like maybe that was one of the first rooms he made, so he thought he needed to point out that you can't go through rooms without a number. Which, if you do maze with children, they oftentimes want to go to the room without a number.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can't go through there. There's a number. All right, next line.
Okay. Not enough light in here, they remarked. Not very tidy either. We've made something out of not very tidy either because you've got the bell on the floor. That seems like it's part of a solution. Not enough light in here seems like a strange one. And it's hard for me not to see. I want to see the letter. I want to see 8 spelled out in there, with the E and enough, and then the IGHT and light. Like I wanted to say, not 8, but.
Do you not see 8s in that moon?
I don't see 8s in the moon.
There's a number of, like, I first thought the moon was 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this past time, today, I was seeing a couple of several times the zeros are close enough to each other, the craters, that they look like 8s. But then that makes me want to find a 6, and I can't find that. So I don't know. I still think the moon is a 0.
Maybe
those craters are 0 like to me. I'm sorry, Barry.
If you cross-eye, like if you're tired and you start cross-eyeing, some of those zeros could come together and become 8s. Which, if you're really tired, and you might be able to see some 8s in there. I could see that.
Yeah.
I can't see it right now, but I mean, for some reason this morning, as I was drawing it, somehow the devil and just his back legs and his tail somehow looks like a raccoon in my version, but I don't get it. But somehow that's what I saw, and on the
animals.
Yeah, on the original version, I'm trying to look to see, if I could do, like, say if I'm tired, cross-eye, and see if I can form a raccoon out of his 2 feet and his tail. I don't see it as much in his version, so.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so probably not 8, but I do think those craters are indicative of, or suggestive of zeros, and I don't think it's like very strongly clued in anywhere else in the room.
Okay, directly above.
Where someone would go through and be like, "Oh, I see zeros in the moon. Let's go to 30."
Directly above 36, I see an 8. It's subtle, and it's sideways.
Yeah. I can indicate.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see what you're saying there. Not too impressed by it though.
Yeah.
No, I think it's weak, but I think it's like that's the best thing I can come up with that the not enough light in here is about. So it's telling you to look up and look down and ignore the middle.
Not enough light, not very tidy. Well, if we're looking at the moon as a source of light, it is right in front of, it touches one of the wrong doors. Is there... I can't think of any way to interpret that not very... if we're taking that as a negative clue, not enough light, not very tidy either. Which one of these doors is very tidy? I guess, the space above 38 is the only door top that doesn't have something in front of it.
But the not very tidy could also refer to the bell, just laying in the middle of a theater floor.
Yeah, it just I kind of feel like those 2 lines should go together in some way, not just like...
Maybe they're talking about room 36, the room it links to. There's not enough light, and it's not very tidy in room 36.
That's true.
Of course, they might be talking about the room they're in as well, which is most likely. But
well, so I think those lines can go together, Vince and Barry, because you have the up and the down, you have the bell, which is a 0, and the moon, which has zeros all over it. So the not could also be 0, but I don't think it's necessarily saying that this is a negative clue.
Not, N-A-U-G-H, not. And look, they both apply to the bell because the bell is on the floor and in the dark. Not enough light, not very tidy. and it refers to the 0 that's on the floor in the dark.
That could work. It
Yeah.
makes you happy. I'm good with it.
Oh, don't do that. Don't patronize me. Don't approve my solutions in your most patronizing voice. But no, I think that seems, it's at least interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else about that line?
Nope.
That was
Right.
good. We got some good stuff out of that line. Okay. Which way now, children? I asked in my most patronizing voice. Gentile suggests that the which way now is another clue to Atlas, because if you didn't know where you're going, you would consult an atlas. I guess my problem with that is that you would never take the clue to indicate that unless you already had Atlas in mind.
Right.
You would think you would consult a map or something. In fact, you would virtually never consult an atlas to figure out which way you're going to go, because an atlas is sort of by definition of...
That'd be like, where am I on the planet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Atlas will have smaller maps of areas, so I guess you could flip to your area potentially on an atlas, but
People use road atlases, but you're right. I don't think it passes the Lewis test. It wouldn't actually help you solve the room. You kind of have to already have solved the room to use that.
But then that's sort of true of the Moon and Saturn too. I mean, Saturn has several moons. Just looking at that wouldn't tell you Atlas. It confirms something you've already got. But I don't know.
1985, and you knew all about that double bird that flew up there.
Yeah. But I don't know that which way now, children, even with that in mind, goes far enough to pointing you to the word Atlas, really.
Yeah. Now, the which way now, children, I have not been able to use that to point to anything except that the setup to use the word patronizing later.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think it's there just so. Well, maybe for two things. Interestingly, this is the only place in the book where he directly refers to the guests as children. And in fact, if you look at some of his other mentions, he refers to them as children in such a way that it seems like he's deliberetely misleading you into thinking that they're actually children. Like in the prologue when he says, is it in the prologue? I think he says, like so many children. I'm going to go back and check now. Yeah, like so many children, they didn't see who I really was. And then...
There's a part where he says they like to think of themselves as adults.
Yes.
Makes me think like they're teen. Like, it seems like they're teenagers just from different things. Like, they kind of don't want to be thought of as kids, but they're not quite grown up.
Are they is he talking to the devils as children?
Oh.
Because the devils first remarked, not enough light in here, not very tidy, or either that or the supposed bunnies, and then the next line is which way now, children, and so I'm thinking he's talking to a group of people that are in the picture.
That could be very well. And, like, that's a mistake I oftentimes make, and I think a lot of people make with Maze, where they think that narratively he's actually, like, even if the guide is talking about himself, sometimes he's actually talking about something in the room that you can see. So it could be someone else he's talking to there.
That's true. If you took it as him talking to the inhabitants of the room actually are answering the question. He says, which way? Well, the devil each have their opinion about which way to go. The patrons there are giving their indication of which way to go.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And that would mean that, again, he's not referring to them directly as children.
Right.
But the other thing is, with the word patronizing in there, it still leaves doubt. Even if you were talking to them, are they actual children? Because if they are, it doesn't seem particularly patronizing to ask
call them children.
Yeah, and say, which way now, children? It's not. Doesn't seem patronizing. unless they're
Right.
not children.
Unless the narrator is referring to himself as the devil or something, and then they'd be children.
The demons maybe are his children. Okay. They objected to my tone, but it distracted them from the real clues. We talked about that. Tone could mean it's just another sound and silence, I think, thing.
Yeah.
You didn't
Well,
really.
and an objection to the devils pointing, because the devils are making noise. So it's a clue to sort of silence and a clue to not, a clue to stay away from those that are making noise.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sound is a distraction. Which
This next sentence I have nothing for, so I'd be interested to go with that.
well, this is what we talked about earlier. The game usually goes as I
Oh,
plan
the
it,
planet, right? Yeah.
despite the intentions of my visitors, or perhaps because of their intentions.
Right.
We discussed before what that could mean. What the devil is this supposed to be? One asked. Note the use of the word one. What the
Yeah.
devil is supposed to be? One asked. I think this is one of those lines that does not have a literal interpretation. Like, I don't think that anyone is referring to any particular thing in the room. Although I don't know why I say that. I think it's just supposed to connect. Well, I suspect it connects the pitchfork with the bell, because the bell is what they're talking about in the rest of the paragraph. But I don't think they're actually gathered around the pitchfork talking about that. I
Right.
don't think it makes sense literally that way. And if they were looking at the pitchfork, he would probably ring the bell to disturb them. I think this is kind of like in room 15, at least three of us can sit down here. It's a statement to give you the number three and talk about sitting and get you thinking about things, but it doesn't have much literal application in the room. The only way it would literally make sense is if they were talking about the bell, which they could. They're talking about the bell, they go to look at it, so the guy picks it up and rings it, and that stops them from figuring out what it's actually there to say.
Yeah, and I think that's the most obvious interpretation of it. I keep wanting to literally make this be something else that he's talking about. But it seems like, they're like, oh, what's this? Maybe because it's dark, right? And they can't make it out quite well. Maybe there's other junk on the ground because it's not very tidy. Like, what's this thing? You're like, oh, crap, they're going to see the zero. Is this what you heard? Ding, 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 ding. So he picks it up. They can't see the zero. And they run away.
Yeah, they gathered around, and I realized they were close to something.
So the zero is round.
Yeah, they gathered around, and I realized they were close to something. Something ought, right?
Ought is nothing, right?
Zero is an ought or a not. Something is ought. They were close to something. They were close to. I think I like that.
Ah, yeah.
That's kind of like corny pun stuff, but that's the kind of thing I've heard in puzzles before, where the ought close to a zero.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's totally, a ridiculous stretch.
Huh.
Okay.
I personally probably wouldn't use that to solve this room, like if I didn't already know the door, but still, yeah.
Well, no, I wouldn't either, but I think most of these rooms or most of the text in these things are full of stuff that you couldn't use to actually solve the room, but I do think that virtually everything he wrote was with some solution or fact about the room in mind.
Yeah, and maybe some of it's like you get some big clue to figure it out, and then you find these little things to kind of support.
Yeah. Quickly picked up the bell, ringing it loudly. Was this what you heard outside? Of course, reference to room 1, where they hear a ringing behind one of the doors, and of course, room 1 is the only room that comes into this room, as we've talked about before, which is interesting. It means that this is. I can't think of another room necessarily where, whether you're heading in or out, well, you can only be heading in from this door. There's no way that you're heading out if you're in this room.
Yeah.
I think that might be the only
Well,
door it's like that. Well,
has,
45. And well, there's 45, there's 23, 32, the rooms that you can only reach on the way back. So that was a dumb thing to say. But as far as, I think this is the only room that you can only access on the way in.
right. I believe.
It's like an Easter egg.
Well, not really, because you have to go to this room to complete the puzzle.
That's true. And for completionists too, I'm sure.
And that observation is like an Easter egg, which is clued by the fact that there are bunnies in the audience.
No, I just didn't want to say it out loud again.
Yep, that's true. That's another clue to Zero. The old end in the room.
Egg.
Yeah. Okay, holding their ears. Holding their ears! You know, again, this seems so obvious, but I don't think I ever really put it together, phrased it like that. Holding their ears, again, indicating ignoring sound. I always just took it as he irritated them with the sound and chased them out of the room. Again, I took it in essentially a literal sense, but instead think of it as they're blocking out the sound and making their choice of where to go.
Yeah.
In their ears, so they're not distracted by the noise.
So really, this room is, to me, is an extension of the kind of key clue to room 1, which is the silences of the maze are as eloquent as the sounds.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this room is all about. And you just kind of learned that lesson and then came into this room. You know, through your path, if you're going the right way. You learned that lesson, came into this room, and you can kind of keep practicing that lesson. It'd be interesting with that in mind to look at room 30. I don't think there's anything with sound in room 30, but
no. Although I mean, I think there is a solid connection from 1 to 26, and it's, the ringing is very explicit, but then the eloquence of silence is also very strong there too. And from 26 to 30, I don't think there's the same connection, but I think there's still a very strong connection. Because you go from 26 with the devil imagery, and you go to the Garden of Eden imagery, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And you also still have a sort of eloquence of silence solution. I'm using that instead of odd one in for some reason. I kind of like saying eloquence of silence.
I think we should use that instead, because this is the maze. This is not just some puzzle. The maze does not have odd one in. The maze has eloquence of silence.
There's an eloquence of silence solution there. I don't know whether it'll catch on. We're going to say it for tonight. When we talked about room 30, we talked about how there's the sign with Eve on it pointing to 5, and then the male symbol pointing to 15, and then the tree of forbidden fruit in front of room 34. So there's still the idea of the correct door being the one that's not indicated, which is, you know, what the eloquence of silence is about.
Right.
So there is that, I think.
Yeah, that's good. And then in 42, 42 is kind of an eloquence of silence, but we could.
Yeah, with the pairs.
With the pairs.
And not only that, there's still a thematic connection with, we just came from the Garden of Eden stuff, now we've got the sign about saints and sinners.
Sinners, yeah.
Paradise on the door. So there seems to be, there's like a thematic path connecting the rooms along the path.
Yeah.
I don't know that it continues to room 4, though.
Yeah, well, 4 has the process of elimination, which is kind of like the eloquence of silence, but a little bit different.
Yeah, well, we don't need to go through the whole path here, but
Yeah.
um, so we've gone through the pictures, we've gone through the words. Any other observation? Anything else anyone has to say about Room 26?
Barry, can you sum it up for us?
Well, it's a very spooky room for this very spooky season, and I have to say there's a lot going on. It's a it's a very very nice room. I think probably my favorite memory of going back to this room was drawing the armchairs and saying these armchairs are really fun to draw. And I didn't even want to do the room. I just wanted to draw more armchairs. That's, that's really all I've got, though.
That's really good. Can I say real quick, Barry brought up spooky. Can I say why I think this room is spooky?
Yeah.
So in a lot of the rooms in the maze, you're kind of alone. And I've had this, I don't know if you played any of the Myst games. I played one called Riven. I think it was the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Where in Myst, you're pretty much alone through the whole game. Then when you get to Riven, like suddenly there's someone there in front of you. And that became like really frightening to me after being alone in all these games. And this room, I know it starts off early in the path, but I had wandered around the maze a long time before I got here. And there's all these rooms where there's no one. There's the room with the musicians where there's some people. There's a few rooms where there's someone. And anytime there's someone actually there, it becomes really threatening to me. And the fact that they're looking at you, you're kind of used to just kind of wandering through the maze on your own. You're in these rooms by yourself, and there's no one there, and so you kind of have your leisure. And when someone's actually there, that's really frightening. And that's what Halloween is all about.
Well spoken.
Yeah, there's something to that. There's definitely a sinister character to the people you run into in the maze, from the masked musicians to
The blind man and the top hat, even the top hat, like when you see him in room 16 through the archway, the fact that he's like looking at you, that you're seeing, because in the whole book you're looking at all these other things, but if someone's looking back at you, that's startling, even if it's just a picture on a page, because you're used to.
All right. I think it's spooky because of the devils. All right, so next week we'll be coming to you with another spooky episode based on a spooky room in the spooktacular month of October. Good night, gentle viewers.
Pleasant scream!
All right.